Hello, Braves. Kailyn Alexander here to share with you to bring attention to Autism Awareness Month. I'm joined today by Mr. Ryan Neufeld. Mr. Neufeld is a former NFL tight end, and he is an autism awareness advocate. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Neufeld. Can we begin by asking you why is it so important for people to have better understanding of autism?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Kailyn. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to these opportunities to bring more awareness to autism. Yeah, for sure. I think now more than ever, more and more individuals are being diagnosed as being on the spectrum. And I think now we run into more people on the around in our neighborhoods or stores that are on the spectrum, and either we encounter them on a daily basis or we know someone directly impacted by autism, whether the individuals themselves are on the spectrum or maybe it's a parent or someone we know directly that might have a sibling on the spectrum. So I just think now more than ever, there are more individuals out in the community on the spectrum. So I think for that reason, it's important to really become more aware of the issue.
Yes, I agree. This is a very important topic. Now, how would you explain some of the symptoms for someone who has been diagnosed with autism?
I think first you might recognize some repetitive behaviors with an individual on the spectrum. Like there's a term called stemming, STEMMING, and it's where an individual on the spectrum will do kind of repetitive behaviors, maybe like a rocking back and forth. With my son, Will, who's on the spectrum, he does some things with his fingers. Like he'll kind of, when he was younger, he would put his fingers in front of his face and do these kind of weird things with his fingers and really close and kind of squint his eyes when he did that. And he doesn't really do it anymore, but now he'll kind of fidget with his fingers, maybe with like little fidget toys or something, just kind of doing things with his fingers. And then, as I said, some people might rock back and forth. It can get more severe with individuals that might even bang their head against a wall. And it can, which is really, it's really unfortunate when it gets to that point. But that's one thing there, stuff like that. And when they do that, I believe it's their way of coping with some sensory issues, like if it's too loud in a room, or maybe with some light if it's too bright, stuff like that they might stem to cope with some sensory issues. Another thing might be like OCD tendencies with like schedules and stuff like that, or like my son might check a door, he like touch a door handle several times. Not sure why, but just some OCD type tendencies. And another big one is language, like the language barrier, language difficulties. Some people on the spectrum are nonverbal. They really cannot communicate. They understand. They might have a device like an iPad or some type of tablet where they can communicate that way. So it's really a language issues are another thing that people on the spectrum, that you'll notice with people on the spectrum.
Wow. What are some misconceptions, more common misconceptions?
I think common misconceptions would be that individuals might think that folks on the spectrum are not really intelligent or not aware of their surroundings or things going on around them, when in fact they are very aware of what's going on around them. People around them, they know who their friends are, they know who people are that they're not familiar with, and they're actually quite bright and smart individuals. There's just because they're not able to communicate as well as mainstream students or individuals, there just might be that misconception that they're quote unquote slow or not really intelligent, which is not the case. They can be very smart individuals themselves too.
Yeah. If you had the attention of an entire school district,
Mhm.
what message would you share to teachers who have students enrolled in their classes who have been diagnosed with autism?
I think that, so as far as with my son, we work a lot with him on being flexible, because he thrives if there's a routine and there's a schedule. There are not a lot of issues when we could stick to that schedule, but life happens. You're going to have to change schedules. Things are going to have to be rearranged at certain point in time. And so we really have to work with him on being flexible and being able to adjust to what happens. If we can't, if I can't schedule his haircut at the same time every 2 weeks, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to adjust here. He might get a little agitated and upset, but we're working through those things will help him in the future work through maybe bigger disruptions in schedule. And so I think on the same note with teachers, they can be flexible as well with the schedule that the teachers have and maybe the curriculum that they have for a particular class or semester or things like that. So there'll be times when a teacher can be flexible too and kind of gauge on how the individual with autism is doing that day. If he's having a rough day, maybe kind of change up your lesson plan for that individual. So that's one. But I think more importantly than that is allow mainstream students to interact regularly with their students that are on the spectrum. Pair them up with someone in the class. Pair up a mainstream student with the child with autism to work together. And I think that interaction that the two will have will not just benefit the individual, the student with autism, but also benefit the mainstream student as well on how to communicate, how to interact with individuals on the spectrum. So I think that the learning and the teaching go back and forth. With my son, when my daughter was born, my son was 4 years old, and his development was really slow. But when my daughter was born, and she got to the age where she can kind of communicate, and my daughter's language picked up normally because she's a mainstream individual, a mainstream student, where she really progressed normally in her language, and she started to interact with Will. For some reason, his language picked up. And then when Will started to go to school and he was around his peers that are mainstream, his behaviors and language would start to improve. So I think it's just that weird dynamic that, or just that connection that I think people have with their peers that allows them to really grow and thrive in those type of settings. So I think really being flexible and allowing students to interact with the individual that's on the spectrum are two huge components for the teachers that have those kids in their class.
Yes, most definitely. What are types of programs you have seen that made you feel that there's progress being made when it comes to autism awareness?
So what I've seen, and it started, so my son is now sophomore in high school. And with the school district where I'm at in Frisco, Texas, they really started early in kind of allowing the kids with autism to kind of interact with individuals that are mainstream. So some of the programs that really helped him are things like Best Buddies program, where they pair up the student with a mainstream student, and they kind of they check in with him throughout the day or hang out with him a little bit at lunch, things like that. And another one, two other programs that really help Will, and that he absolutely loves when he goes to school, are Partners PE, where in PE they set him up with a regular student, and Partners Theater. So he has a theater class where in his classmates and other students on the spectrum are paired up with regular students, mainstream students in a theater class. And so and then him being with his peers and then getting to the point where he'll go on stage and do performances has just, I mean, it just helped his confidence tremendously. And so I just think those type of programs are so important in the classroom and in schools.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Neufeld. Again, for just being here with us. It's an honor interviewing you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time.
No problem. Anytime. You have a good one, Mr. Neufeld. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You too.